Anyway, yes, I'm going to show you the progress and the things that we've been doing. Now, a bit of a disclaimer first. This is one of these activities we had proposed in the project in the beginning as something relatively different, innovative, and I think it was even mentioned as something. Oh yes, we're interested in the first when we got the first reviews, and it goes from scratch. So it's something quite different from all the other things you might be seeing, and you will not see much EO data directly, but you'll see a lot. But it's based on partly EO data and partly other stuff. And so, what is this about? Well, first, it comes from a state of seeing that, okay, there's a lot of interactions between human and natural domains. There's a lot of things in the economic cycle that are linked to land use, land cover, other things. And basically the thing is that it's complicated. And merging the spheres of society and biosphere and atmosphere is complicated. And the idea was to try, and it's an old idea that has been fermenting at the Max Planck Institute where I'm working for quite a long time. And we thought it's something we can try and tackle here, or let's give it a try. And the idea is to summarize and reduce this complexity of both the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the anthroposphere, and the interactions between these. Logically, we would get out of this a planetary health index, which could be used to diagnose syndromes of change. This is a lot of nice big words like that maybe I think stem more from Markus Reichstein, my director, than myself. And he had this metaphor, I guess, for the planet, but that in the medical sector, you would have something like this, that you have different indices like the heart rate, the oxygen levels, and the electrocardiogram, and like the brain pulses and things like that as indicators to monitor a patient. And the doctor knows, reading these things, say, okay, this is the syndrome, no? And it's a combination of these things, and they're speaking of different parts of the problem. So this is a bit the idea, to get these kind of things. And in a way, you could imagine something like this, in which you could have these three indicators of the different spheres, and you could detect, because we have this goes, yeah. So you could imagine that these evolve in time, and at one point one goes up or down, and there's some effects of one to the other. It might be that you monitor one country and it affects another. This is a bit the long-term goal, the things that would be done. Now, we do have a stakeholder in this project for this, and it's the European Central Bank, which is interested in having synthetic tools and indices to address systemic risk. In a nutshell, they're interested in the risk of the financial sector with climate change, biodiversity, but also these other way. And they don't quite know what they need, really, but they're interested in bringing all these types of data together. So it was a good deal, no? And the tool should be both gridded and vector data should be there. It should be interpretable, and it should be applicable also on their own confidential data, ideally. So our objective was to resume the complexity and high dimensionality of Earth system data into the most relevant and meaningful components and maximizing their physical interpretability. And it was an attempt to summarize the synchronous change for any points based on three axes, representing the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the societal sphere independently. That's a bit the nice goal. How to proceed? We actually had these spheres that we are representing in different data cubes. So we define different data that goes into different data cubes, and out of them, we define axes. In short, the axis is something like, if you have a data cube that is only explaining atmosphere, you might have heard of a PCA, a principal component analysis, in which you summarize the complexity there into principal components that explain most of the variance and allow you to explain that cube, right? Now, we use this idea of a canonical component analysis, which is another thing in statistics where you have one cube and you summarize components, but that don't explain the same one, but they explain the cube of another data set. No? In this case, if you follow the color scheme, is the biosphere, atmosphere explaining the biosphere. And you can have the other way around. Then we find a way, like there were some tools, methodologies to do something in which we actually tried to explain both of the data cube based on these components. And so we did that. Well, we have a framework with a package that was being able to do that. And we did a first prototype that I showed last year, in which we used the Earth System Data Lab cube and the World Height indicators. It's a core thing, 25 degrees, 0.25 degrees resolution, 8 daily, and World Bank indicators were at an annual level and national level. And basically, we ended up having axes that explain. So here are the principal components of the atmosphere explaining the other two cubes. And you see that there's different, a line like that, meaning this is one axis that goes into radiation and temperature are explaining this one, and this is another orthogonal axis based on other factors that are doing something else. You have the equivalent for the biosphere, you have the equivalent for the sociosphere, and it's a bit complex. The idea was, and we started exploring these things, and the idea is that in this complex system, you would see a country like Brazil and see the evolution in time, and see that sometimes something is changing and it's changing directions. And that would be an indicator that something is going on there that is more on the atmosphere side, affecting the social side or the biosphere side. This is another view from another angle in which you see that there's a turning point, no? And the idea is to use this as a tool to identify things that you might not be expecting to see in the data because it's a bit complicated. However, we did this with many countries and it's a bit of a mess, honestly. It's not quite clear. We had some examples showing how in this cloud of points, we would end up having extremes and you wouldn't be able to note some extreme events in some places, no, that are outside of the traditional trajectory. But, and also Van Tong, who was doing this in the first years, she managed to cluster and saw that there's some patterns out of these behaviors now, and that some are like low-income countries would drive in dry places or wet places or middle-income countries and things like that. So we were interested. I mean, we're getting somewhere, but we're not quite there yet. So what did we learn from this first step? We had a proof of concept. We explored keeping or removing trends. It was not clear if we should. Some events are detectable, but not systematically. But actually, our problem was that the countries were too big. We had national data. So for Brazil, it's the whole of Brazil summarized in one value for 1 year. Not great. And the interpretation of the axis still is a bit strange. So current progress, and this is what the new stuff. We tried a bit something different. To choose a more homogeneous domain, Europe, because it's more socioeconomically more similar, and that there's more and more harmonized statistics from Eurostat. So we could have a hope of having more information that is more reliable. And we also went higher in granularity in both time and space. So having more data points, going finer. And to make this axis more interpretable, we tried something that I'll show you quickly. But basically, so now we redid the things with ERA 5 as our so we have ERA 5 that we transformed to with an in-house thing that we do, which is FluxComX basically. And we have these as our cubes of atmosphere and biosphere, which are 5-kilometer daily data. And we used Eurostat maps, and these are at NUTS 2 or NUTS 3 level. And they talk about everything. I mean, agriculture, product, tourism, I don't know what I put, access to internet at home and things like that. This is the idea, no? And so we set up the thing in which we have a spatial aggregator school tool to put all this gridded data to NUTS level, and another tool to select data set from Eurostat, do a couple of things, bring it the three-way CCA, and then going towards the view. This is our general flowchart. Now, for the three-way CCA simplification, basically, instead of doing what I showed you there before, is that we actually did two separate ones. And so now we're explaining one for the other and the other. And this dual way, it becomes a bit more tricky. So we actually did this thing for all of them, and we have 6 CCAs. And the resulting correlations is like how one explains the other. For example, this is how atmosphere explains biosphere, the first component, and this is how biosphere explains atmosphere. So this is the two mirror images. And as you see, these are very correlated. It means that you can really go from one to the other. This is correlation. It's not causation. It's a tool to explore links from one to the other. And then we have the atmosphere to socioeconomic sphere. And for now, with the things that we did, it looks a bit like a mess, but we still have 0.5 correlation, which for like things going from atmosphere to socioeconomic, like it's trying to explain like, okay, how the weather is affecting GDP and things like that. No, so it's catching something, and we still have to play a bit out of this. Here I show you, for instance, and I'm not going to be too long, like all the loadings for all the variables we use, and they are like the higher they go, it means that these are used a lot to explain the correlation of the other. So for example, in these variables, which are wet meteo variables or from L5, this one or skin temperature is very high to explain socioeconomic data. Whereas in these ones, you have NDVI or NDVI, for example, is relatively high also for that. On the food price, here are some of the socioeconomic prices trying to explain biosphere and atmosphere. And you see that food price or fuel or gas price are actually one of the things that are picked up. We didn't put everything. This is a bit of a mock one, no? And this is the first component, and we have a second component. That's details that we don't want to get into detail. Now, the last thing I just wanted to show also on where we're going at with this is that you can use the CCA of atmosphere explained biosphere and atmosphere explained in sociosphere, no? As how atmosphere is going into both directions. And these are the trajectories of some knots. So I put Perugia, Barcelona, Izmir, I mean, different places around here. And they go along this axis. And the idea is that at some point, it's still a bit like this is the work in progress. Now that we imagine that if you go along one axis, this means that this is mainly there's no effect on socioeconomics. But when you have a sharp turn on something, it means, okay, now the importance, the relationship is more stronger in this direction than the other. And this is the kind of things that then you can go and dig down and see, okay, why is Perugia doing this behavior on this part of the year or in this part of the data set? And ideally, that's where we're going. So to conclude, I don't know actually how much time I'm taking, but whatever. You'll cut me if needed. Conclusions and next steps. First, we might have found another partner or stakeholder because recently we visited the University of Erfurt's Institute for Planetary Health Behavior. And so they're doing things in between psychology and actually Earth system science as well. And they are quite interested about this. And it would be quite nice to develop something with them at one point. We have refined initial approach, and I think we are getting somewhere closer to interpretability. We have higher data quality from pixel size, time, and source. In this case, higher correlation across components, and possibly in axes that are more interpretable and usable for our users, for the stakeholders and the ECB. So we need to do that now and explore it further with them. We're in close contact because they told us which data set from Eurostat to start looking at. We included some, but then there's plenty. We need to maybe actually do some dimensionality reduction of those because sometimes you get, for example, in those things I have employment, I just put employment of 1, total employment of 25 to 65. But then you have this divided by female employment, later age employment, all these things. And so actually, maybe that needs to be reduced first and then come in here. And also we need to integrate this new approach in the viewer that we have built in-house because also, as it's not like the standard viewing thing, again, it's a bit of something ad hoc. And so we have it as a tier 2 in the OpenGeoHub monitor viewing system. And then finalize the project task. And so actually the extra months will be very useful to actually make this even more consistent. That's it. So thank you for your attention. I hope that was understandable to a point and that we can discuss more further.
We have some questions. Yes, here, please. Thanks for nice talk. So there was the medical analogy. It's very helpful, of course, but then I was wondering, have you looked into human health indicators and how they correlate? I mean, I guess they are part from the anthroposphere. So have you looked into this or not?
Quick answer, no. But this is when I met these people at the Planetary Health Behavior department, and I thought they are looking at these kind of things. And I think, I mean, we didn't know them in the beginning of the project, and we could have used them as stakeholder had we known. But I think this might be an outcome of this from the project, is that the tool that we're making ideally is something that you could decide, you choose what indices you put in, the thing makes the convolution, the correlations and everything, and you can visualize it. And ideally, we would like it to have it as a small package that people could use to their own data and ask these questions. Because we haven't seen it. I think it could be done. It won't be done in the framework of this project right now, but it could be something that will be done after. Hopefully.
Did you try using machine learning also maybe to mine the relationships? No.
No, but it's also so the reason we did it, although we were inclined to, that was to start because we wanted to ensure interpretability. No, and here it still remains, despite that it looks complex, it's all linear. So you actually can see that if one component is made of education and I don't know what, I mean, these are directly used with that weight. Whereas when we put it in machine learning, for sure it could be done, but then it goes into this whole encoder decoder thing, and it becomes something that it might be more difficult to interpret. We could do it with chat values, or something like that, but let's say this would be the next level way to do it, and I'm not sure this is what the policy people want right now, right? Because it's.
Okay, it's exciting. I think it's a good decision to switch to Europe only. I think that's a good decision. And are you using the up to NAS 3 level or
yes,
it's up to NAS 2 level? So this should really, because the NAS 3 is quite detailed, so you should
maybe too much.
Yeah, you should be able to see if there's some relationship. So thank you. We have to continue. Thank you.